Hello, I'm Nobby Clark. Welcome to my workshop. In a couple of my previous videos I showed you some of the tools I've made as projects in my workshop. I'd like to show you some of the other items that I've made over the last few years. Got them a few of them gathered here. I'll bring the camera a little bit closer so that you can see them in better detail. Bear with me just a moment. In a previous video I already showed you a couple of the tap wrenches I'd made and a tap holder and die holder to use in the tailstock of my lathe. But scanning through eBay, I was quite intrigued by a tap wrench made by Eclipse, which is a flat tap wrench. They always tend to sort of go for quite a lot of money, so I thought, well, let's have a go at making one of my own, and this was the result. I've made it as sort of, well, very similar to the design of the Eclipse one. You've got a moving jaw in here, which is sort of held captive under this plate, with a thread that runs through this little brass knob here that will wind the jaw in and out to lock the tap in place. I do actually use this quite a lot. It's quite a nice, comfortable design to use. It's just made out of some scrap material I had. This was some hot rolled steel that I had, not the best thing to work with, but I made some indents on both sides with a ball nose end mill, which sort of made it sort of quite a nice tool to make. It's quite an interesting project. Something else to show you here, the tap that's actually in this at the moment is one that I made myself. I was working on a project where I needed a left-handed tap for the project. I ordered a small set of taps and dies from China from two different suppliers. The dies arrived, which were absolutely fine, but when the taps arrived, they all turned out to be right-handed taps. Obviously I contacted the seller, who were very apologetic, and they did actually offer to sort of refund me part of the money if I agreed to keep the taps. So I thought, well, rather than reorder them again and wait another couple of weeks, I'll have a go at actually making one. This is made out of silver steel or drill rod. As I had the dies, I was able to cut the thread and then cut the clearance grooves in the tap itself, and then shape the end, and then cut the four-sided clamping area at the end with a point here so that it could fit into a tap follower. This was then hardened and tempered, and it worked perfectly. I was quite surprised, really. I thought probably the first time I used it, it'll snap, but it didn't. And although I completed the project I was working on, the project didn't work. So anyway, I've now got a small set of dies and one tap with left-handed threads to them. One of the earliest things that I made, which I guess a lot of people make, is a scribe, which is a thing that everyone really needs in the workshop. I just made this out of a piece of brass rod. There's obviously not a lot of work involved in this. Just shape the end and put some grooves which are both decorative and give you the hand grip. And the scribe itself, that's suggested by some other YouTubers, is made out of a fairly heavy gauge darning needle, which works fine. And obviously if the end becomes blunt, you can just heat this up because I Loctited it in place, just heat it up, pull that out and pop another one in. And I've been using this, I guess now for about 6 years, and it's only recently that I treated myself to a new scriber with a retractable carbide tip, but I mean, I guess this will still get used as well. Obviously, with my milling machine, one thing that I felt I really needed was a fly cutter. So again, a project that you can make yourself, make your own fly cutter. I already had the tool bit for this. This was a sort of a 1-day project to build this, and although it doesn't look particularly pretty, it's a very functional item, and I literally use this so much. Most of the work I do on the milling machine, particularly if I'm using aluminium, you get a really nice surface if you fly cut it rather than machine it with an end mill. So this gets in a huge amount of use. In fact, just recently I bought a new tool for this, because the one I was using, the end got blunted because I was cutting some hot rolled steel with it, which just blunted the tool immediately. So I bought a new tool for it. So I've got sort of two now, so if I'm using this and the tool becomes blunt, I can quickly switch it over if I'm sort of midway through a project. Lots of interesting projects you can make, if you're sort of looking for something to make, sort of during a rainy weekend. Something I made here are a couple of tiny G-clamps, not designed for real heavy use, because the body of them is just made out of aluminium, but this was made by sort of machining them out on a milling machine. I made the screw for them as well, and I actually use these quite a lot. They're sort of quite a functional item. I've got lots of small G-clamps in my tool collection, some of them very, very old that I've had for many years, but these have proved to be quite a useful item to have around the workshop, and sort of very, very easy thing to make. A lot of fun making little tools like this. A tool I really would love to have are adjustable parallels, but they are so expensive. And if you want to buy real quality ones, the ones made by Sterrett, which can be bought individually or in sets, are quite dear, and even the import ones are very expensive. But for my use, I only really needed a fairly small one, so I thought, as an experiment, I'll try and make one, which that was the result. It works, it functions very well, and I've used it a few times now, often using it as a jacking device under work in the milling machine. It has a couple of little set screws in here which you can just tighten them up once you've got it in position and unlock it in place. That it's only very small, but it covers the sort of range that I sort of regularly use. Quite an interesting project to make that. Making the angle here and then machining out the grooves in here with a small end mill. It's quite a fascinating little item to make. On the lathe, one of my favourite tools is a tool which has one of these small button inserts. This insert's about 1/4 of an inch across. I bought one of these initially, which I found so useful. This is the one I actually bought. Problem is, at the time I could only find these in a 12mm square shank. The problem is using this on my Myford lathe is that using this in the tool holder, although it will fit the tool holder, you can't drop the tool holder down enough to get the tool to the centre position. So I had to machine away part of the back here, so it's down to sort of just a fraction under 10mm now, and that works perfectly. I've actually did buy another one of these so that I can use the inserts. I've got one insert generally that I use for steel and one for aluminium, because the wear on them obviously is different for the two different materials. But having done that, what I thought would be handy is to have another one to do facing off on material as well. You get such a beautiful finish with this. It's if you make very, very small cuts, you get a finish very much like you would with a shear tool. And if you use this to do facing off at the end of material, you get such a beautiful surface. So I thought, well, a third one would be useful, rather than spend, whatever the cost was. These, I don't know, were £12 or something for the holder. I thought, I'm going to make myself one. So I made one using this one as a pattern, and this is the one I actually made. It's just made out of mild steel, which is obviously strong enough for the job, and then cutting the same shapes in it, and then machining in the little step here, and then cutting the seat for the button insert here. I started by using a 1/4-inch drill to drill into here, and then I took an old quarter drill and flattened the end of it so that I could get a flat seat for the tool to sit into. Then it was just a matter of drilling through for the little screw. I'd already previously bought a pack of these tiny screws with the Torx end on them, because it's inevitable that at one point you're going to drop one of these on the floor and you'll never ever find it. So I bought a pack of about 10 of these, so I have some spare ones. And then obviously you need to sort of shape this to give you the clearance at the end of the tool. And it works fine. There's no problem with it at all. I already made this. It's a 1/2-inch wide material, but I machined it down to about 10mm so that it will easily set to the right centre height in the Myford lathe. In fact, since then I've made another one of these, so I've got 4 of them now. I made one of these to use on my mini lathe as well, so I can leave that in the tool holder all the time. So I've got 4 of these now, but I do use these all the time now. If you want to machine a piece of metal, I often use these just for the final cut. I would machine it down with a regular carbide insert, and then the final stage is just bring it down to size with these to get a really nice finish. Moving on, when I bought my Myford lathe, it came with a lot of accessories, and it came with a genuine Dixon quick change tool holder, and it had 2 genuine original tool holders as well. These are the type of tool holders. This isn't one of them. I bought, because you need so many of these, I bought quite a lot of these in sort of batches over the years. These are, I think, are made in India. They're fine. They're very nicely made. They're all sort of machined and ground. and sort of, a reasonable price as well. It's rather difficult to find the genuine ones. If you can find the genuine Dixon tool holders, I mean, they always are very, very expensive. But when I initially bought the lathe, there was just the 2 tool holders to start with. So I thought, well, is this something I could make? I mean, if you look at the profile on this, I mean, it is incredibly complicated. Although all the angles here are 45-degree angles, obviously a lot of work in producing these. But I did make one. I actually made it out of aluminium. This is it. It's the only one I made, and probably the only one I ever will make, because this was a very, very long project to make. I had to take some very accurate measurements from an original one to make this, and this took me a long time to machine all these angles on here. But it was such an interesting project to do, and I was so pleased with the end result. Obviously the screws here are just standard off the shelf items, but I did make the height adjustment here. That's I machined all of this myself, taking measurements from here. You've got to make this part quite accurately as well, and otherwise it simply won't lock into the tool holder. Obviously the fixing screw and a screw here are just sort of standard off the shelf items, but being made out of aluminium, really there's no real problem, because with the work I do, I'm not machining very, very heavy material, so I don't think there's any danger that this would be damaged or distorted. In fact, on my Chinese mini lathe, I bought one of the cheapest tool holders you can buy for that, which came in a set, the quick change tool holder and 4 tool holders, 2 standard ones, one for a boring bar and one for a cut-off blade. And I've made, when I only had the Chinese mini lathe, obviously I needed more tool holders, so I made something like about 16 tool holders for that, but they were quite simple things to produce, much simpler than the Dixon design. Well, that sort of covers all the various, well, not all the tools I've made. I've made lots of others that, perhaps I could show you those at another date. In the background here, you see a couple of other items, obviously not items that I made, but everyone in their workshop really needs an anvil. And this is my anvil. It's an old flat iron. I found this in one of these sort of antique shopping malls. I think it was about £10. So I've mounted it upside down in a great big heavy block of wood. You can actually see the handle through here. Even the date on here, I made it in April 2020. And I use this a lot. It's such a useful thing to have, and it takes me back to my youth and my dad's workshop in the basement of our home in East London. He did mostly woodwork, but then there are occasions where he needed an anvil, and he had just the base section off an old iron. It was one with a very shiny surface to it, and he used that quite a lot for straightening out nails and bending bits of metal and so forth. And he also had about a 4-inch square piece of 1/2-inch steel that did a similar job. So I think of him when I'm hammering something on the top of that. But a little while back, I was sort of talking to someone about anvils, and I was given this. a piece of railway line. This is going to make a brilliant anvil. I'm not sure whether I'm going to leave the top shaped or not, or whether I'm going to grind that flat. I'm not quite sure, because if I want a flat surface, of course I can just turn it on its side. But that's quite a nice slice of railway line there. I'm sure the railway company won't miss that. I don't believe it came out of an actual railway line in use, but I think that's going to be a very, very handy item to have in the workshop. Anyway, thank you for joining me again in the workshop. You see, I've now got a Nobby's Workshop sign. I wish this was one that was cast out of solid bronze, but it isn't. It's one I actually made. I found in a hobby store some little laser cut letters, and I sort of made the sign up to look like a sign off a railway engine or a traction engine, and bought myself a little pot of bronze paint. I think that looks quite nice. Going to hang that up in the workshop somewhere. Anyway, as I say, thank you for joining me again. Thank you also for everyone that subscribed to my channel. The numbers are going up steadily. If you haven't subscribed, well, please do. It'd be lovely to get the numbers up to a nice big round figure by Christmas time, if that was at all possible. And also thank you very, very much for everyone that sent me nice comments about the channel and what I'm doing here, and for all the lovely advice that you're giving me. Anyway, thank you very much. Bye bye for now.